Hey guys, and welcome to Living with the Lindsays. It's our live show, and we are happy that you have joined with us. Please share that link, share it all over on WhatsApp, on Facebook, wherever you can. Share that link and let persons know that we are on and we are live. Today, we have on our show with us Dale Hamilton, and we are happy to have him. And we're just going to invite Dale to tell us about himself. Dale? Oh, he's coming on, guys. Be patient with us. All right, Dale is back on. Dale, we are happy to have you. Thank you for joining with us today. And we just want to know a little bit about you.
Okay. Now, just testing it. Everybody can hear me clear, see me clear.
Yes, we can hear you and see you clearly.
Okay. Okay. So, about myself. So, my name is Dale Hamilton, and as you can all see, I was born with albinism. And about myself, I'm someone who's very passionate, very goal orientated, and albinism has played a huge part in my life. It's played a huge part in my success, and it's something that I realized that I can start to encourage into other people who also have albinism and help push the albinism community forward.
Oh, wow. Yes, thank you, Dale. So, Dale, where are you joining us from?
So right now I'm right now I'm on vacation, but I do live in New York City, so that is where I'm from. I'm from New York.
Okay, okay. So it's a pleasure to have Dale with us this afternoon. And our show this afternoon will focus on growing up as a Black boy with albinism. So that is our focus today. And we want the information that is shared with us today to help not only my husband and I, but our wider audience that is viewing in order to help them to relate to persons with albinism. So, Dale, what as a boy growing up, what are some things that you couldn't do due to albinism?
So one of the main things that came to mind when you asked that question is definitely sports. Sports was extremely hard to get into as a young man with albinism because our vision. Now, some people with albinism have better vision than others. However, me speaking for myself and my situation, my vision is pretty bad. So, growing up, I wasn't able to join sports, and that was pretty difficult because a lot of my friends and a lot of, let's say, the cooler people at the school, all of the cooler guys, they all played sports, whether it be football or basketball. So naturally, it was something that I wanted to get into, but that I could not because of my vision due to albinism.
Okay. Wow. So Dale, what did you find as a substitute since you couldn't get into sports?
Um, I guess eventually later on down the line, maybe a substitute became video games. That was something that was pretty easy to engage in with many other people because that was something that everyone played, easy to engage into, and something that didn't really require a vision or any kind of special equipment or things like that. So as I got a little bit older, that was my way of engaging with other boys my age.
Okay, okay. Wow. So do any of your parents have albinism?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Wow.
I have
Okay.
one cousin with albinism.
Pardon? Repeat that for us.
I just have one cousin with albinism, but none of my parents, none of my siblings.
Oh, okay. So, how were your parents able to help you throughout life not having experienced what you are experiencing?
So, one thing that I would say that my mother would constantly do is she would constantly push and encourage me to love myself, love my image. And she was very protective over me. If we were out in public and someone would shout an insult at me or would stare at me, she would be the one to stand up and she would be the one to respond to them. So that alone gave me a certain level of mental and emotional protection. So that was one of the biggest things that my mom would do, was really protecting me from those who would try to insult me or try to, attack me or stare at me. And when I say attack, I mean like verbally or things like that. So my parents, they were very protective. And they always kind of taught me a certain level of confidence and self-love. So that was super helpful.
Okay, that is great. That is so good to have the support of parents, and although they didn't experience all that you were going through, they were still able to support you and teach you how to love yourself just as you were.
Absolutely.
So, what would you say to parents who have children with albinism? What advice would you give them?
My biggest advice would be, number one, please link with all of your communities and all of the services. There are tons and tons of services. Specifically within the realm of New York, you have the Lighthouse, which is for people with low vision. You also have NOAA, that is a national organization for people with albinism. So, my advice would be, number one, link to all the communities that can help your child with albinism. Two,
Oh,
teach them self-love and teach them confidence. It's very important that when you have albinism, that you do not feel like you're different from others. It's important that you don't feel like you're different or that you're weird or anything like that. So self-love and self-confidence is super, super important. So those would be my two advice.
okay. All right. Great. So I know that physical education is sometimes indoors or outdoors. So when you were going to school, was it indoors or outdoors? And were you able to participate in physical education, that subject, any at all?
Well, so for me growing up, physical education was both. It was indoors and outdoors. And when it was outdoors, it was pretty difficult to engage. Like the biggest example I can think of is when we had to run the mile. We had a mile run, and I believe we had to do that twice a year. And for me, that was always like very, very difficult to do, because obviously we only went out to do the mile run when it was summertime, and when it was summertime and it's very hot, it was difficult for me to run around that track. But when it was and then when the sports were indoors, it was still difficult because of my vision.
Okay.
So like wearing glasses and trying to play dodgeball or basketball could be a little bit of a nuisance at times. So you're constantly worrying about not breaking your glasses, not damaging them, things like that. So that was the difficulties with the indoor and outdoor PE.
Okay. So as a parent, I love to be protective over my children, and I have both a daughter and a son with albinism. So
Wow.
would you suggest that I request exemption from physical activities for them when they start to attend school? What do you feel about that topic?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely not. It's not that serious. It's
okay.
not that serious to the point where you want to make them exempt. I would
Hmm.
say this though, definitely write a letter to the teacher and maybe even to the principal if necessary, and just let them know on really hot summer days, those are definitely the days to exclude your child from those activities. So that's one thing that I would do, is that when it was like a really hot day, then I would go and I would speak to the coach or speak to the PE teacher aside and say, hey, today I really can't participate. It is way too hot. I don't want to get sunburned. But other than that, there's no need to fully exclude them from outdoor activities. Just on the days in which it's particularly very hot, then yes, write a letter to the teacher or let them know, hey, these are the days and the times that my child, it's best for them not to participate outdoor.
Okay, thank you for that. For our viewers, if you have any questions, you are free to put them in the chat box. We want to hear from you, and we want to answer your questions. All right, so Dale, tell me about your experience in school academically as a child with albinism.
Okay, so one thing is this, academically in school, because of my low vision, I was very dependent on equipment. So whether that be magnifying glasses, um, extra time on tests in case I had difficulties reading the text. So does it affect your academic performance? It could, because there are times where you may need a note taker to read the notes that are on the board. And I know one particular example is like with math class. Math was particularly more difficult because you had to see the board in order to see how they wrote out their explanations for different equations and things like that. So at times like that, I would request for a note taker so they would actually take down the notes from off the board that I could not read, and then I would be able to study those notes, and then that would help me academically. So to answer your question, it is super important to access all the resources, all the tools, and all the technology that you need to perform well academically, whether that be magnifying classes, larger text, note takers, whatever the case.
Okay, thank you, Dale. So I live in a country where albinism is not popular at all. So I believe that my family is maybe one out of two that have kids with albinism. So the schools and the different facilities don't cater much. We don't have any
Mm.
resources here. Do you think that will be a challenge for my children growing up in a place like this?
100%. Um, uh, so I'm assuming you're in Africa or
Turks and Caicos Islands.
oh, Turks and Caicos. Okay.
Yes.
So here's the thing, right? Me living in the United States, we have an abundance of low vision programs and programs for the blind. And as you're expressing, you don't have those kind of programs out there.
No.
So it's going to be very difficult, because those are the entities and the companies that provided all the assistance that I needed, was the low vision companies, the vision for the blind. So if those companies are not out there, I think it would be best to advocate for these things. And then what you will probably have to do as a parent is you're probably going to have to reach out to the people that are in charge of their academics. So what I mean by that is, when your child is enrolled in school, reaching out to the principal of that school, beyond the teachers, beyond the teachers and the people who do that, but reach out to the principals and let them know, hey, listen, I have a child with albinism. They are visually impaired. We need X, Y, and Z. We don't have any companies that can do this for us. We need this to be provided by you guys. It is critically important. So, and same thing with like a job. Let's say your child gets a job and there are some difficulties that they are having with their vision, then you need to reach out to whomever their bosses are, their supervisors are, and tell them, hey, my child may struggle with X, Y, and Z. He needs larger print for this. They need this and that. So you're going to have to be very vocal. You're going to have to advocate a lot harder than the average parent, because those companies don't exist already for you guys.
Okay. Thank you so much for that advice. Now, I have a almost 4 year old who had, well, she has albinism and she has just started to trace and color. And I remember when we began tracing, even now, I've eased up a little bit, but I'm constantly telling her to stay on the line, stay on the line. But she has a great difficulty staying on the line. I wanted to know, could that be because of her albinism, her visual
Well,
impairment to some extent?
yeah, it definitely could be due to the visual impairment. It definitely could be. And one thing that could probably help with that is trying to get larger text. So if what she's tracing happens to be small text, try to see if you can enlarge it before printing it so you can get a larger print. If not, even try using magnifying glasses. That could be very helpful. So yes, I do agree that that probably is because of the visual impairment. It's probably harder for her to be within the thin lines of what she's tracing.
Okay, thank you so much. So, um, as if a young boy with albinism is watching today, what advice do you have, whether a boy or a girl? What advice would you offer them?
My advice is love yourselves. Be super confident in yourself. Love yourself. Albinism is a beautiful thing to have. It has absolutely helped me out in everything that I've ever done in life. It is a great thing to have. And if you do have albinism, make sure that you reach out to all the programs, all the services that are in your area, if there are any in your area. Make sure that you continue to advocate for the things that you need. There's plenty of programs out there. Please try to find some, even if you have to do a Google search. And that's my advice. Continue to love yourself, continue to know and understand that albinism is something beautiful. It makes you unique, and it makes you unique in a good way.
Yes, thank you so much for that advice. So I know that you're now grown, of course. I see that you're married, Dale. So how is it now for you as a young man living with albinism?
So for me, and I kind of been like this way for a while. Uh, I'm over it, so I don't
Okay.
notice anything anymore. Like if I like, sometimes I could be walking down the street with a friend or walking down the street with my wife, and she'll turn to me and be like, "Hey, you notice those people are staring at you? Do you notice those people are looking at you?" And I don't notice it anymore. I don't pay attention to it anymore. I don't care. So for me, I probably still do get certain things like the stares, the pointing. I probably still do get that even in my 30s now. I'm 33, and I,
Okay.
I still I still get that kind of attention as an adult, but it doesn't bother me. I don't pay attention to it, and I don't even notice it. And the visual aspect affecting my adult life is probably driving. Me
Mm,
personally, I cannot drive. The
okay.
legal requirement to operate a vehicle, your vision has to be 20/70 or better, at least in the United States. I do not meet that requirement. So within my adult life, I do know that I'm unable to drive. So that those would be the two aspects of how it affects my life today. And then the normal stuff like when it gets hot, I still have to make sure I'm very protected, have on sunscreen, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, there's still some factors into the adult life.
Okay. So I hear you mention that you're not able to drive, and I know that
That's correct.
everyone likes that independence of being able to get up and go where you want to go when you want to go. So how does that make you feel? I know that you have accepted it, but how did it make you feel?
So, growing up at the age of 18, when it was time to go get a license or try to get a license, it was difficult, because when I started to work and get different jobs, I then had to be dependent on someone else to take me to and from where I wanted to go. And
Hmm.
that became difficult because now you're working a job. Let's say your job is 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Now you're depending on someone to pick you up and drop you off every single day, 5 days a week, and that could become a nuisance. Some one of the days the person may not feel like driving you. The next day the person's car may break down. So it was very difficult to constantly be dependent on someone else to do something for you. So I would try to look into other ways, such as public transportation. So wherever I go, I try to look for public transportation to get me from point A to point B, so that I don't become so dependent on another driver.
Okay, okay. All right. So you're okay with it now.
Oh
It's
yeah, oh yeah.
yeah. Okay.
And and
All
and
right.
I will say this: I respect that law. The fact that people with my level of vision cannot drive, I
Hmm.
respect that because clearly that law is in place for our safety. Because
Yes.
for someone with my vision to drive, it would probably be not probably, it would be dangerous to
Okay.
operate a car on a highway or on a main street, and your vision is not that clear. So I 100% respect it.
Okay. All right. So, Dale, a question. Do all persons with Albin, okay, let me rephrase. Does anyone with albinism, is anyone with albinism able to drive, or all persons with albinism can't drive?
Some people can. I'll be honest with you and tell you, majority of people with albinism cannot drive, but some can. There's a good percentage of some that can, and it's all dependent on your vision. So, just keeping that mark of 2070 as your mark of knowing that's you have to be at least 2070 or better. So some people with albinism can drive, and the ones that can drive, it has to be with corrective lens. And you
Okay.
may have some restrictions, such as you may only drive in the daytime. Some of them get the permission to drive in the daytime and nighttime, but with corrective lens. And the last thing is some people can drive with optical lens, and that's with the telescopic lens that goes over the glasses. Some
Okay.
can drive if they have that. So it just depends on your vision.
Okay. Thanks for that information, Dale. A wealth of information you have shared with me and our viewers this afternoon. And again, viewers, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box right now. We are getting ready to close off this session, and I wouldn't want to close with you having your questions. I want to pose them so that our presenter can answer as best as he can. All right. So Dale, thank you for joining us. We have in Turks and Caicos, as I said, not many persons with albinism. And when my husband and I first had our daughter, it was something. It was something. Trust me. They didn't even believe that the child was ours. Many persons, we got
Yeah,
stared.
my mom told
Even
me that too.
yeah, even up to this day, we still get stares for persons who are seeing us for the first time, and they question and they find it strange because we are not in a place where albinism is prevalent. In Jamaica, where we are originally from, we get to see persons with albinism, and somehow we feel like we belong. We feel like we have found
Yeah.
our family because we see people like us and we see people who have children with albinism. So what advice would you offer persons who are seeing a couple, sorry, with children with albinism
Okay.
for the
So
first time? Yeah.
okay. Oh, so what would I say to other people who see you guys as a couple with kids with albinism?
Yes.
I would say this, and correct me if I'm wrong here. I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that when people are brave enough to come and ask questions, you guys wouldn't mind answering those questions
Yes.
for them.
Not at all.
Right. So that would be my advice. If you see a couple with children with albinism, or if you just see another child with albinism, and you might be a little concerned, you may not know if they have albinism or not, you may not know if they may be mixed or not. Do not be afraid to ask questions, but make sure you do it in the polite manner, because you do have some people out there that will ask very obnoxious questions or very rude questions. So I would say keep it polite, keep it professional, but don't be afraid to ask questions. And that is the way that you can educate them. So all the time people come up to me and say, "Are you albino? What is albinism? What does it mean?" And I'm able to educate them. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Okay. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for us, viewers, fans, those persons who are watching? I don't see any questions in our chat. Dale, it was a pleasure having you on our show this afternoon. I
Thank
cannot tell you how appreciative we are that you um, had blessed us with your presence, and the information that you shared is invaluable. Okay, so I see a question coming in. It says, it's probably actually a comment. This has really opened my eyes to the school system we have here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Many of them truly don't cater for albinism. And as a student teacher, I would really like to learn more to help my future students. Okay, that's great. That's great. So thank you again, Dale. Any closing words, any parting words you have for us?
Yes, so I just want to tell people how to reach me and how to reach my albinism podcast. So if they do have any questions about albinism, even that could be a great reference. And on my channel, we've done many, 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 many topics. We talked about how albinism affects schooling, how albinism affects early childhood. We've even spoken about how it affects dating and how other people look at you. We've spoken about albinism in the media. So let me just give that out there. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, it is life with albinism with underscores in between each word. So to be correct, that is life underscore with underscore albinism. You can find us on Instagram and on YouTube. The Albinism podcast is Life with Albinism podcast. All you have to
Okay.
do is go to YouTube, go into the search bar, type in Life with Albinism podcast, and you will find us. We are on episode 19, I believe. So we have guests from all over the world, all over New York City, all different topics. Make sure you subscribe, follow us, hit the notification bell so you can get all the information and see all the episodes that we do.
Okay, thank you so much, Dale. We will be
Thank
sure to
you.
like, follow, and subscribe. Again, we thank you for gracing us with your presence here this afternoon. Thank you for all the information and advice that you have shared. And the most important thing that I will take away from this is love yourself. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you to our
Thank
viewers
you.
for
Thank
watching,
you.
and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.